He's like, the difference between me and you is you're a multimillionaire, I'm a billionaire. You would just hustle. You would just grit it out. You just do all the work yourself. You destroy bandwidth. You wouldn't spend any time with your family. You think it's all about hustle, but the reality is it's all about the framework. We actually have a cabin. I don't know if it's a lodge or a cabin. It's hard to say. It's nicer than our home, and it's been this really amazing experience. Last September, we bought this, and part of it was the thoughts around legacy, because I was thinking, hey, I have well, he's 14 now. He was 13 when we bought it, and I'm like, I want to stack the odds in our favor for him to keep coming around and wanting to come back and spend time with us, and I want to create these really great experiences, because one of my buddies, Jim Shields, has a company called 18 Summers. And it was basically saying, hey, you've got your kids for 18 summers, and even part of those 18 summers, they're teenagers, so just how much you have them during that time, I'm not quite sure. I'm watching him actually start to connect with me more now that he's 14, and his hormones have kicked in. He's asking me questions, having me help him text girls. It's a really strange thing. He's all of a sudden started working out in the morning with me. It's like amazing what happens with the hormones. Although the other day he comes to work out, he's got cologne on. I'm like, bro, like, no cologne in the gym, man. Like, it's just me. You don't have to impress me. And he's like, I'm running a little bit low. I'm like, not surprised. I can smell it. It's super thick here. Like, we got to teach you moderation with this stuff. But yeah, we're going to go there this weekend to the cabin, because it's my 17-year anniversary on June 1st, and we're actually going to bring the kids there. So yeah, pretty cool. And I really see like legacy a lot more in how we live than just what we leave, right? So in the framework and context of today, there's really 4 main segments that I want to uncover, unveil, and then we can definitely have discussion around. The first one is going to be around mindset. And in mindset, there's going to be a couple different sides to the coin to give more insight into this world of scarcity. Because scarcity is this silent killer of wealth. It's kind of this mindset that people have where they believe it's a reality, and therefore they act within that perspective. And that first part of that mindset is really this playing not to lose. And I don't think there's a lot of people in this room that are stuck in playing not to lose, even though most of society is stuck in playing not to lose. It's the thought that you could save yourself rich, right? You're going to pinch pennies until you get blisters on your fingers, but hopefully one day, someday, you'll end up with a lot of money, and that's the millionaire next door mindset, where you have plenty of cash, but you're broke, where you've got a lot of money, but you don't enjoy it, right? And that kind of mindset where people, I went to an event recently where this guy, he had 1.8 million subscribers on YouTube, so I wanted to learn from him, and everyone in the crowd asked the same question. I've been thinking about doing this for 7 years, for 15 years, and it was so rudimentary on the questions, and he's just spending all the time getting them to take action. In playing not to lose, people don't take action because they fear what might happen when they take that action. What does that mean if they're not successful right out the gate? And here's the reality, is we're not going to be successful every single step of the way. It's not going to go completely smooth. We're going to make certain mistakes, but we're going to learn from those mistakes. Just like when we were kids. When you're a kid and you walk for the first time, your parents actually celebrate the first step, not get upset that you fell on the second step. And they don't think because you fell that you're never going to get up and learn to walk. We just assume that part of the mistakes are the process of getting where we want to go, but in playing not to lose, there's no room for mistake, because all of a sudden it means that we're not good enough, or that we're not worthy, or what will people think? And we spend so much time consumed in that type of thinking, and like I said, that's not where the majority of the room is, but there's a different form of scarcity, more subtle yet even more destructive. And that other form of scarcity is playing to win. Playing to win is what you'll read about in magazines. It's what you'll see on the cover of magazines. It's where you're going to hear about the people that we hold up as icons and heroes. And we say, these are the people that we want to be like. But as soon as we unveil a little bit about their life, we find out that maybe they're successful in one area based upon what society deems success to be. And I think that's a major trap, societal success. Society doesn't celebrate family. Society doesn't celebrate experience. Society doesn't celebrate recreation and rejuvenation unless it's showing off because you're in a private plane, right? It's all about this monetary wealth. It's about awards. It's about accolades and recognition. And it became part of this American dream where it's like, did you have a big enough home? Did you have the right kind of car? And people checked the boxes, but they found out they weren't fulfilled because we live our life for someone else's definition, not our own. And so a lot of this win then play is about the journey, but it's about identifying what a win is for you. And when money is the only benchmark, it's never going to be a win. Here's why, because you'll meet someone with more money. You'll get to the point where you thought you had enough money, but then you realize that there's more to get. And all it is this never-ending horizon of more, and it's a complete disease that's demonstrative. Look, and I got it. I did that in my 20s. Like, in my 20s, I just want to have more than anyone I knew, and then every time I met someone that had more, I was just pissed off at them and frustrated, couldn't celebrate that, and then I started to feel bad about myself. I could have a moment, like, I have a friend, his name's Jeff. He had a private plane. And when he landed in his private plane at the airport, he looked over and he says, whose plane's that? They said, oh, that's Huntsman's plane. And it was bigger than his, and it was nicer than his. And he went from feeling really rich and great to feeling like a complete failure in life because someone had a bigger plane. That's societal success. And look, our friends from Texas say it well, since we got, it's like, all hat, no cattle, right? Like, that's kind of what happens in a lot of these situations. And so that playing not to lose, I want to leave you with a few questions to really, playing to win, leave you with the questions to really ask if the win is right for you. So when you look at whatever you're doing in life, I want you to just ask, is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the juice worth the squeeze in what you're doing? There's plenty of ways to make money, but not every money-making way is the best way, right? It takes being more abundant to actually say no to certain things, to reserve and be abundant enough to know that the right opportunities will come along, and to focus rather than diversify because you're really dialed in with what you do. The next thing is play to win at what cost? At what cost? Like, okay, you're going to get there, and even if you get there, what do you lose along the way? Because plenty of people lose relationships, they lose health, they lose a lot of things in the playing to win philosophy, and it doesn't take much research to figure this out. I mean, now we're seeing articles about Elon Musk being pretty miserable. He's sleeping at the office. He's not getting more than 2 hours sleep. He's gone through a divorce. His wife now is writing articles about it. Like, a lot of that was because he had his eye on a pretty amazing, spectacular vision, but that vision didn't have room for him. So, like, for me, it became, what if money was a cool benchmark, but I had a benchmark called quality of life that began. It was quality of life first, and then money was second. And it didn't mean an either or. It just meant that I can have consideration, and I could start to say no to things because it didn't equate to quality of life. It wasn't like, hey, I can make money by doing this, so I'll just say yes, but at the same time, diminish my health, be away from my family, come back exhausted, have less to give. I think that's the trap of play to win, is we don't actually have the best of who we are because instead of thinking about scale and leverage, we're just busy. We're just doing. So the first piece being mindset, we identify where play to win becomes very destructive. I just spoke at the MIT Endicott House, which for the alumni, and there was this thing called Gathering of the Titans, and they asked a few people during the event, like that were new to the event, what their last words would be on their deathbed, and this guy literally said, I'll just tell people to play to win. I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna blow this dude's mind. I'm about to blow this dude's mind because play to win, I could just feel it. I could just see the tiredness in his face. And we had a good conversation after my talk. So the third mindset is gonna be this win, then play. W-I-N, win first, then play. And the ways that we're going to do that is in three main segments, which bring out the other pieces. So the second piece will be money. So in the win then play world, there's a few ways we look at money. One is through efficiency. How can we just keep a lot more of what we make without working harder? We'll focus on 4 I's and more. One of the 4 I's I'll dive in deep. The other 3 I'll skim, and then if there's questions, we can cover it. The first one is the IRS. It used to be 93% of business owners were overpaying on tax. Now, because of 199A, it looks like it's more like 97, 98% based upon our surveys that we've been doing. The second way to save a lot of money is interest, how you structure your loans. Everything from restructure to renegotiation to even reallocation, which is where you get your funding, and maybe even if you fund things yourself. And then the third I is investments. There's a lot of hidden fees, there's a lot of commissions, there's a lot of non-performing fees, and more importantly, there's a lot of downside risk people are willing to take because they think it is what's required for return. But if I can teach you how to mitigate and manage risk better, you'll just have more money in the future. So that's the third I. And then the fourth I to efficiency is insurance. Whether it's you set up your own insurance company and you eliminate a lot of insurance costs, or whether it is you don't insure inconsequential things and you only insure catastrophic things, and it ends up being that you transfer more risk with the same dollar, or you put more money in your pocket, or we just find duplicate coverages or costs. Like, these are big momentum things in money. We're not talking about, hey, clipping coupons, or not eating out. Like, that kind of stuff might make a little difference. We're talking about the major difference that doesn't infringe upon your life. That's one way to win then play, is to find that. Another way to win then play is economic independence. Economic independence is when your assets create enough cash flow to cover your expenses. We're just talking about basic life expenses. We're not talking about being in this lodge every day necessarily, but we're talking about just the basics of life. When that's covered by your assets because you think as a cash flow investor rather than an accumulator, and when those assets are doing that work for you, then what you can do is you can swing for the fences in everything you do because you've already won the game. You can think more about vision, impact, quality of life, whatever it is that matters most, so that you're making a choice with your daily actions, not doing it simply because you have to pay a bill that day. That's a game changer. That's economic independence. That's a win-then-play methodology. And I'll give you what that framework is. And then another win-then-play is, how can you make money on the buy? How can you make money on the buy? Like, I think that the world has been erroneously taught that net worth is the god of finance, that it's the ultimate measure. And the more net worth that we have, the more wealthy we are, but the reality is net worth, it's a lot like muscle. It's great to have, but you know what? Cash flow is like blood. I don't care how much muscle you have. If you don't have blood flow, that muscle isn't worth anything. So cash flow is absolutely king. We've heard that over and over again. But this is how I think you make money on the buy. Is if we look at people that are simply looking at a balance sheet as their main focus, right? They're just trying to boost more assets, minimize their liabilities, so they have more equity, they have more net worth. These are the people that become most susceptible to loss in recessions. We're in the second longest period in US history without a recession, right? So what's happening is all these people that are focused on net worth, when a recession occurs, they're not really good at managing the downside risk. When those assets start to decline, then we see a few things happen. Either one, they're in a cash crunch now, because before they can get a line of credit easily, or we saw that in 2008. Like, there was a lot of people that just went and got home equity lines of credit because they lived in Vegas or wherever, and the market went up. And you can get it if you could fog a mirror. They just started giving these things out, and so now they're buying things on that credit, which still has a payment attached to it. And then all of a sudden, when they can't access that, and maybe their income drops or their business changes, or they don't make these adjustments, now they have to start selling assets. And guess who makes money then? People that have cash. When you have cash, you can make money on the buy. That's a win-then-play. When you think about making money on the buy, two ways I think of making money on the buy. Number one, I'm buying it at a song, at a discount. I'm helping them get liquidity I'm paying way less than what it's actually worth because of their situation. And two, if I can create more cash flow than what the cost is associated with it, I've already won. I'm already generating more economic independence and cash flow. So the first thing is mindset. We're going to talk about a win-then-play mindset. The second is money. We're talking about the 4 I's to efficiency. We're talking about economic independence. And we're also discussing how to make money on the buy. The third piece, I was just on the phone with someone they now have a $10 million business without starting with a single dollar. Like, this is a really cool concept. This is called the cycle of creation. So we go money, mindset, then money. Now we're going to scale. Now we're going to business. And the cycle of creation is really 4 main phases. And it's not how business used to be done. Business used to be done on who did you know, how much money could you access, what money could you give to a government to support you. There was so much more complexity for someone that had big ideas. In today's world, there's the cycle of creation. This is a very win-then-play concept. So let's just say that you had an idea, right? Just any idea. Like, for me, it's the book Win Then Play as an idea. That's an idea. I've actually got the manuscript, and in August, we'll start selling the book before it's released. We're going to sell it to people before it's released because I'm going to do the audiobook before I release the physical hard copy, which isn't what normally happens. So people can immediately get a download and get the physical copy sometime in Q1. Plus, I've done 4 webinars, And I did the transcripts and rewrote them, and we're putting together a journal, so anyone that buys it ahead of time gets all these exclusive bonuses only for that time period, which means we could pre-sell books before we actually have them published. I did 22,000 copies of Killing Sacred Cows before I ever held it in my hand. I just pre-sold it. I said, hey, you want to have me speak? Buy 500 copies. Had a ton of financial advisors where I'd say, hey, if you buy 250 copies, I'll do it. Back in those days, it was a teleseminar series, specifically for your clients. So they use it to educate them. They interviewed me, and all of a sudden I would sell a large, bulk of books, and then I also gave bonuses. Back in then, it was DVDs and CDs and stuff like that if they bought up front. But see, you can have an idea, and an idea is something that's just in your mind. It's kind of you haven't shared it yet. But the next phase in an idea is where it can really become profitable, and that's a concept. When an idea moves to a concept, it's more materialized, it's crystallized, it's shared somewhere. And where you can see concepts all day long, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, GoFundMe, you just see concepts. I just talked to the people that did the Best Self Journal, right? The Best Self Journal, they raised, I think, $275,000 to produce this, which, by the way, this is what I love about it. They didn't go raise money from investors, because no investor really cares about 250 grand unless it's family and friends. It's no venture capitalist that's ever going to fund that. You're not going to find angel investors typically that are going to fund something that small. But the reality was they owed no money when the product came out because their end user was the funder. They actually built momentum. And this is what's great. Some people make the mistake of getting feedback from the wrong people. Like the way that we make mistake getting feedback from the wrong people is if I took and I had a concept of my book, and I said, hey, Mom, what do you think? She's going to tell me she likes it one way or the other. It's my mom. She's not writing me a check for it, right? Or ask family and friends. And they either are overly critical because they don't like me, or they're overly nice because they do. They have all these biases and all this information in their head that's clouding their judgment, and we're getting feedback from people who don't write checks, and that's not valid feedback. People that don't write checks many times are just not your customer, so who cares what their opinion is about your product? I like to go to a concept phase where now I can share this publicly. And so when we did our very first video series, it was called Fast Track on Demand. And we didn't have a finished second floor of our building at the time. And I want to put a TV studio in there with a control room and the quiet air conditioners and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't want to just go, cash out all my money for it or go borrow money. So what we did was we just sent a survey to anyone who had ever bought anything from us in the past. And we said, hey, we're thinking about doing a video series. What do you think? And then they told us what they would like. Anyone that responded to the survey, we had a salesperson call them and say, hey, you want to be part of the beta group? The beta group, it's $1,250 instead of the full $2,500. So we pre-sold it. And we said, here's what we're asking because we're charging you less. One, we need a load of patience. It might not be perfect the first time around. The technology glitches might exist. So we actually asked for that patience. The second thing is we said, we want your feedback so that we can actually deliver what you're looking for. What's going to get you to watch it? What is it you're looking for as far as information? We ended up building tests. I wasn't planning on building tests, but people wanted that. We ended up creating, workbooks. We ended up doing a few other things. And then when it was actually time to come out, well, we already made $150,000 up front, invested $100,000 in a TV studio, $10,000 in the video editor, and I walked away with 20 grand, and the other Garrett that filmed with me walked away with 20 grand because we did it up front. I just went to the Indy 500 this last weekend. Turns out one of our clients is the heir to the Indy 500, and didn't know this, but I went and spoke in Indianapolis. They hosted it in the Pagoda, and I was like, this is amazing. They're like, oh yeah, this is ours. I'm like, oh. Like, would you like to come and have a VIP experience at the Indy 500? I was like, I sure would. And I'm telling my wife, I'm like, let's go to the Indy 500. She's like, I'm not into that. She's like, it'll be hot. I'm like, we're not going to be in the heat. She's like, I'm reading. You have to walk everywhere. I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're not. Like, they gave me a personal cart with my name on it. It was a phenomenal experience. But what I was thinking about in a win-then-play way is they had already won before the race happened. They already pre-sold all the tickets. And these guys really figured out how to win then play. Like, first off, they have all these young kids that go to something called the Snake Pit where they have DJs performing. And so people go and they don't even watch the race even though they bought tickets. They're just listening to DJs, and they start at 7:30 a.m. 7:30 a.m. and then they just go all the way through the race. And then there's an entire golf course inside of the Indy 500. Just an entire golf course in there. Like, think about all the ways they figured out how to monetize this. And then they've pre-sold the tickets. And then I actually got a ride in a car. I thought I was going to get to go with Mario Andretti. I was a little nervous about that, by the way. He's like 79 years old. And I didn't want him to be like, Mario Andretti crashed and died and some other Italian was in the car with him. Like, you know. But yeah, by the way, his car went 20 miles an hour faster than all the other cars. But I actually got to go ride in an Indy 500 car the day before the race on the track. So they just think of all of these experiences, right? So these are just win then play things. And at one time, they're just a concept. So they even in the Christmas time, you can drive on the track and look at Christmas lights that they set up. They're just thinking of all these additional ways to monetize, because every time you go through the cycle of creation, you're looking at additional ways to add value, to get more money with the existing assets. And I feel like this is where a lot of wealth is lost, is we don't extract all the value from our existing assets. Whether that's a business, whether that's creating cash flow, whether that's maximizing tax deductions. So since I know a lot of you do real estate, there's amazing benefits that way. So in cycle of creation, let me just give you kind of a little bit of a formula, because the reality here is it's a value creation formula. And really, if you've read books like The Lean Startup, this will follow some of those principles where you start with something that's minimally viable, that you're doing that beta version, you're pre-selling it. But the way that you move through the cycle is through the value equation, which is your mental capital. So what are your ideas, knowledge, wisdom, tools, systems? And you multiply that by your relationship capital. So your relationship capital are networks, organizations, individuals, masterminds, freedom founders. It's all these people that you could tap into, their knowledge and their networks. And every time you begin with an idea, then you're looking at what mental and relationship capital it's going to take to make that a concept. So it could be anything from what you already know to who you already know, or who even you don't know but your network knows that can move that along. I mean, Bill Burr, I love this guy as a comedian. I don't know if anyone's listened to Bill Burr, but he had this whole thing where he's making fun of Steve Jobs, where he's like, a dude didn't do anything. He didn't actually like program a single thing. I'm like, yeah, but he had vision, right? But he's right. He tapped into relationship capital, and he did not have the mental capital to build anything himself, but he did have the mental capital to create a vision compelling enough to get other people to build it. So the next part of this is what I call the framework. So the framework is where real delegation exists. And I love when you include your customers in your framework. They're giving you the feedback. They're paying for things up front, right? This framework means you can delegate this. It means that there's other people. When I was speaking in Boston, one of my buddies from Dallas was there who mentored me a long time ago, and he used to go to lunch with a billionaire once a month, Phil Romano. And Phil had this great idea, and then Rick's asking him about, well, what do you need? He goes, I'm just looking for someone that could run this. Looking for someone that could be the CEO. Do you know someone? He said, no. But when they met again the next month, he said, how's that business going? He goes, what do you mean? He says, how far along are you? He's like, I'm still searching for the right person. He's like, the difference between me and you is you're a multimillionaire, I'm a billionaire. You would just hustle. You would just grit it out. You just do all the work yourself. You destroy bandwidth. You wouldn't spend any time with your family. You think it's all about hustle, but the reality is it's all about the framework, right? And so all we're doing is saying what mental capital and relationship capital you need to move it from a concept to a framework. It's a clearer vision. It's proper delegation. It's an architecture behind the production. It's when you can truly delegate to someone that has skill sets that you don't have, that are A-teamers that can actually own it and run with it so you don't have to micromanage it. That's what a framework is. And then from the framework, it becomes a product, a service, or an experience in the marketplace, right? And so how the cycle works is you begin with the thing that someone will pay for before it's even done. And then once you get the money and once you have that first version of the product, then you go down a second round. The second round is, what else could we add to it? How can we add more value? What is it that people are looking for? And what some people try to do is go build the perfect thing up front, and then they run out of cash. They run out of momentum. They get frustrated. The market goes, that's not what we're really looking for. It becomes so cumbersome and expensive. Like I have a friend that's building a software, and I'm like, why don't you win then play it? Why don't you pre-sell the software? He's like, there will be bugs. I'm like, tell them there's going to be bugs. You're going to pay a lot less for it right now. You're going to be our eyes and ears to tell us what we actually want to create, because has anyone ever created software in here and had it get completely out of hand? I built something back in 07. I just had to abandon it. I'm like, I don't even know how to use it. There's way too much functionality. I need something simple, right? We use that and then maybe expand. So that's a cycle of creation. It's how do you win first, then play. I did it with videos, I did it with books, I'm gonna continue to do it with books, and I'm gonna use the customers to be the funding mechanism so I owe no cash at the end, and not only do I don't owe any cash, I've got momentum. Like when I did 5-Day Weekend, we had a readers group. That readers group started telling people about the book, right? They got included and thanked inside of the book. But when I don't use win then play, it usually costs me. I had a, this is on camera, so I won't name the organization. I had a big organization that all of you know want me to create a course for them. So I go and I film the entire course. Now, I go film the entire course, and it's their editors, and they're going to put it up on their website. And in the middle of this, they get sued from a company. They got a licensing agreement that goes sideways. They got all that. So the course just been sitting there for 2 years. So I finally get a hold of them. I'm like, how far along is it? Why don't you just send it to me? And they'd only edited 2 videos. I'm like, we could have done that in the first day. So the lesson there would have been, why don't we pre-sell the course? Why don't we pre-sell the course? And if it's, now all of a sudden there's hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't even care if they don't have the editors. We can pay outside editors to do it. We've already have proof of concept. So I really like to begin this way, and I've had it work where I had a guy that was like, hey, he was mentoring Harv Eker, and he's like, why don't you come and speak, because I'm not a speaker and you are, and we'll sell this program that we can create together. And he wanted to film 27 videos before he went to speak. I said, why don't we film a video and see what that's like? And then why don't we write an outline? And why don't we pre-sell it from stage? Now, this guy, we probably practiced 20 times before we went up on stage because we were going to share stage. He had it down to the precise moment. What he didn't realize is sometimes when you speak to a group of 900 people, there's a massive amount of energy, and people start taking pictures of your slides, or they clap at the things you say, and so he got all jazzed up and went like 20 minutes over his time. So I didn't even make an offer, right? And I was so glad that we didn't build the product because I got to see that this wasn't really his realm. I didn't want to go into business with them. I referred him to someone else. They did great in a business together, and I freed up my time because I wanted to make sure it was a win for me. And a win is quality of life and money.